us and completing the poll. We're really excited to be doing this webinar today about the FAFSA lesson plan we've created. It's an awesome tool to reach your seniors and really help them complete the FAFSA and really just increase their understanding overall about financial aid. And so I'm lucky to be joined today by Dr. Melissa Shields. We're expected to also have Portia Hall of Birmingham City Schools, but unfortunately there's last minute change in the school schedule. She won't be able to join us today, but we have Dr. Shields. And if Melissa will move on to the next slide, I will tell you a little bit more about her. Before moving into administrative roles 10 years ago, Dr. Melissa Shields taught language arts and history for 16 years. She later supervised various departments for Etowah County Schools, and in 2015 moved to the Alabama Department of Education in the Office of Student Learning, serving as a regional support coordinator for Central and Northern Alabama. And so she was one of the people with original ideas for the lesson plan. She helped us develop it and review it. And she was also on Twitter. Be sure to note that if you tweet, you can follow her. And so before we jump into all about the lesson plan, I am going to ask that we launch another poll and get a sense of if you in your school have been doing the lesson plan, whether it was last year or during the current school year. So right now, for anyone joining, we're just checking in about if you've implemented the FAFSA lesson plan before at your school, whether it was the last school year or the current school year. Melissa, could you share the results that you're seeing?
Sure.
So it looks like all of the current participants on the webinar have not implemented the lesson plan. So that's great to know that. And we really hope that this lesson plan and the information will give you the motivation and the information and skills to get started on that. So without further ado, I'm going to let Dr. Melissa Shields take over and tell you more about the lesson plan. Participants in the webinar can ask questions either through the chat feature or through the Q&A feature of the webinar software. So I will be monitoring those questions, and as they're relevant to the topic, I will ask Melissa to answer them, or we have a Q&A session reserved at the end. So however you prefer to ask, and we will share accordingly. But Melissa, thank you for being with us today.
I'm just honored to be here. Well, hi friends. I am thrilled to join you and talk a little bit about what we've kind of seen evolve over the last couple of years. One of the things I think that inspired the FAFSA lesson plan is we were really thinking about ways that we could reach all high school seniors, not just those who knew about FAFSA or had parents who knew about FAFSA. So we knew that embedding this into maybe their senior curricula could be a way to make sure that as an equity piece, all high school seniors know about FAFSA. We've seen and read stories of other states who have followed suit in embedding FAFSA completions in their curricula. And so, and I may let Vanessa speak a little bit more about that, but Blount County schools implemented it in 2016-17 and had some significant increases in FAFSA completions. Did you want to add anything to that, Vanessa?
Sure, just particularly in California and some regions, school districts and organizations similar to Alabama Possible with the Cash for College program, they have found that one of their most effective strategies to reach every student and actually making sure the FAFSA gets filed is through the lesson plan being implemented during the school day.
Thank you. So in working with Cash for College, and my work at the State Department is really working with schools towards school improvement efforts, curriculum, those sorts of things. And I feel very strongly that helping our students be ready for college financially, if they so choose to attend college, is certainly a component of that. So in partnering with Alabama Possible, we had some discussions about what we could do to increase our FAFSA completions through work at the schools. And so that was kind of where it all started. And then I'm an old high school and middle school English and history teacher. So we were talking about how we could easily look at the content standards for economics, of course for English, and then even though career preparedness is many times taught in the 9th and 10th grades, those of you familiar with that course of study know that there is a standard specific to FAFSA and college financial aid. And of course, our 9th and 10th grade students are not necessarily vested in that conversation at that point. So we included that, or kind of revisited the career preparedness standards related to FAFSA completions in this lesson plan. I'm one of those. I've taught on every schedule. I've taught block, I've taught 7-period, I've taught hybrid. And so we also wanted to come up with a lesson plan that would be very adaptable for the scheduling or logistics of a particular high school. Also looking at how it could be led by a government teacher, economics, English. Some schools, and I think this is a fabulous idea, I wish I could claim it, are using FAFSA completions as part of their senior projects or senior portfolios, so that all of the content areas at the senior level are working together to help students be prepared for what's beyond high school. And FAFSA completions is one of those areas of their project. I think we're often asked who's responsible, and that's up to the school. There's, you hear a lot about fidelity, this has to be completed or implemented to fidelity. That's not the case. It certainly is what kind of human capital do you have at your school that can implement this lesson plan. Certainly counselors can facilitate it and working with teachers, or they can train the teachers themselves on how to implement it. It's pretty user-friendly, so I don't think it requires a lot of training other than being very familiar with FAFSA. I mean, it goes without saying that a team approach is the best, so that everybody's vested. You've got your counselors, your teachers, hopefully your career coaches, since they're in our high schools a couple times a week, or each of the high schools, and implementing the FAFSA lesson plan. Just like we teach our elementary teachers, it's important that we use the same language, whoever is in front of those students, so that the career coaches, counselors, and teachers are using those same FAFSA terms or financial aid language to make sure the kids know what we're talking about. And certainly having your principals or your district, I was a district curriculum director, this would have been something that I certainly would have supported and made sure that our principals understood, let's maybe protect some time so that our seniors have the opportunity to complete this particular activity. Vanessa, I'm going to kind of turn it back to you in terms of the financial aid language. Is there anything you wanted to touch on there?
Sure. The lesson plan provides some resources for that, but it's important, especially with a project involving various actors, that using the same language, have solid understanding of Pell Grants, loans, subsidized, unsubsidized, especially when teachers may not be as familiar with that, or it's been many years since they've had to go through that themselves. And so making sure that anyone helping implement the lesson plan feels confident in the language and what it means to be able to support students through the process.
Right. I'm in schools, and of course, we're often talking about scholarship opportunities, funding opportunities for college. And it's interesting that I find out not just our parents, but many times educators don't realize that scholarships and financial aid can be stacked. So just because I don't have to tell you that, you know that, but just because your child gets a 4-year academic scholarship or athletic scholarship, those other financial aids can certainly stack on top of those. So very quickly, just kind of going over the lesson plan without getting into the nitty gritty. This was just an overview, and at the time, Ashley Staples was working with Cash for College, and she is not a teacher, or was not a teacher, and she did a great job of pulling this together when we were going through the content standards. And she is much more of an expert on FAFSA completions than I am, much like Vanessa. They certainly, this is their area of expertise. So looking at everything that needs to be accomplished and all the T's, the I's to dot, the T's to cross, those sorts of things were addressed in the lesson plan. Certainly, the impetus of the lesson plan was that students understand the importance of filing it. Even if they talk to their parents who don't know what it is, and so they may not have that kind of sense of urgency at home because the parents are not familiar with that. So helping the students understand is certainly important. Prior to starting, just like Vanessa mentioned, it's important that we know as teachers and as counselors the key vocabulary that those students are going to experience when completing FAFSAs. And there are some super helpful handouts on financial aid terms and list of items required to complete the FAFSA. So this is what a typical day would look like. And like I said, I just want to throw it out there that this might require 2 days depending on the schedule. I know some schools have a skinny period, and so this may take 3 days. So it really, just because it says day 1 does not necessarily mean it has to be completed in a 90-minute block or a 50-minute class period. But day 1 normally is just around exposure, basic knowledge of what FAFSA is, like I said, those vocabulary terms that they will experience, the difference in one thing and another, and then actually helping the students log into FAFSA and create that ID, which is really important. Vanessa, once again, I don't steal your thunder. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, that's it.
Okay. Lesson 2 is just taking it a step further, going through the features of FAFSA, such as online help, and then actually allowing students to start entering information. And if possible, it just depends on the classroom and the availability to their cell phones or to their parents to call and text their parents or their family members for information. Now, several schools I work with do that differently. They may send home a form that has 5 blanks that say, okay, when you come to school tomorrow, this is the 5 things we need to know to be able to complete your FAFSA. But that's certainly, once again, that's up to each school how they want to do that. But this is where it's exceptionally important to have friends in the classroom with you. So a sole teacher trying to do this with 30, 35 kids in a classroom would be a bit difficult. So at this point to have the counselor or the teacher or career coach or assistant principal or just a cadre of 12th grade teachers, I think would be very helpful to have everybody kind of on board during this process.
And
Dave?
I was just going to add, I think the preparation beforehand is really critical. And I think that's one of the things Portia would have said if she were able to be on the webinar today. But some of the forms that Alabama Possible has to help students collect parents' information, and also notifying parents beforehand that students are going to be doing this at the school is just really helpful to make things go more smoothly, efficiently, not take anyone by surprise either. So I definitely encourage you to work in preparation time building up to implementing the lesson plan during the school day.
Yes, that is a great point. If you certainly are calling parents, kids are texting, "Hey, mom, how much money did you make last year?" And that might take them by surprise. So to kind of mitigate that, what is this about? I think, yeah, to send an informational letter that your child might be calling to ask for information. This is what we're doing. I think that's super smart. Day 3, in looking at actually helping the students complete the FAFSA during class time. Once again, just double checking to make sure everything is done. I can't tell you how many students I've heard about that thought they were done, but didn't go through that final process to make sure that indeed it was submitted. And then explaining what that student aid report and importance of reviewing it. And also reminding them that just that you completed this year, this is something that each year you're going to have to go in and review and make sure that your information is current and that you have submitted it to get funding for the following year. These are some suggestions, and actually took some of these from Portia, who actually implemented the lesson plan in her class last year. I work with all of Birmingham City Schools, and I know this was something that they made a critical part of their senior class, is to make sure that students had completed their FAFSAs. So one of the things is to really space it out, to give students the time to digest, talk with their parents, collect that information, just like Vanessa had mentioned. And then having perhaps kind of a sidebar conversation with counselors, career coaches, financial officers, to kind of come together first, maybe to plan, okay, this is what we're going to do, and then present during perhaps day 2 or 3 when students are actually completing the FAFSAs online. And, if classroom completion time is not possible, yes, it can certainly be a homework assignment, but once again, that really depends on the nature of your school and your classroom, what that might look like. Now for those, and I think this is the question, I work with a lot of districts that have migrant students or homeless students. So having kind of a process in place before you start of how we can help students with complicated situations, whatever that might be, so that when those questions come up, we can provide direction for them. So with that, we've kind of gone through it, like I said, pretty quickly, but it is, the lesson plan is really standalone in that the teachers and the counselors and career coaches can look at it, and it's very easy to make changes or embed other standards or curricular items to the existing plan as it stands now. Questions that we may have via, and I can't see the chat room, but I will try to look. Any questions that you have?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I don't see any questions submitted right now, so we'll give people a couple minutes. Feel free in the chat or the Q&A feature of Zoom, whatever looks easiest for you right now. And I will say, I know this year there's been an increase in verifications and the number of students being flagged for that. So that's certainly a key piece to mention. And we do have one counselor who even took the initiative to create a What's After FAFSA handout. So we're in the process of reviewing that, and we'll share it when it's ready. It's just another resource you can give students to let them know what will happen if they do get selected for verification. So I think that's just one more thing to highlight, because unfortunately for the reasons that be at the Department of Education at the federal level, that is something that's happening, and really don't want it to catch students off guard, because we don't want to give any more reasons to discourage them from pursuing college.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of my take on it as well, because when we first really started placing a lot of emphasis on FAFSA completions, which I think we always have, is just now I think it's just been a more concerted effort to make sure that all of our students know about it. And it's not saying that every child should go to college, but it is saying if every child wants to go to college, or any child that wants to go to college, we can certainly give them an opportunity to have that partially or wholly funded, and they can make that decision after they graduate.
Mm-hmm. I know Portia had also mentioned a technique that she found really helpful in the creation of the FSA ID and showing the help guide, is setting up the projector and the screen and walking students through step by step. And so having that visual tool was really helpful and successful in her classroom.
I think she had mentioned something like maybe she had gotten her relative's FAFSA and
Yeah.
was able to actually pull it up and show the students what a completed FAFSA might look like. I thought that was great.
Yeah. So I'm just checking for questions. Okay, I'm getting a question that's what is the FAFSA completion project? And apparently, and there's an email that went out from the Board of Education today. I'm not sure if this is exactly what this entails, but the Alabama State Department is getting ready to release its student portal. And so finally, what teachers, counselors, career coaches have been long waiting for is a tool to look up students and see who has completed the FAFSA and who hasn't. And so they've been piloting it, testing it, and they're getting ready for schools to sign on to their agreement and be able to use it. And so that's going to be a very powerful resource for all of you. And we're really excited about it. And it will help minimize verification and just make sure students are able to get their FAFSAs fully completed. So that's what that is. More information will be coming your way about that, I'm sure.
One of the issues we've had over the last few years is we've been able to see, I might have, 260 seniors. And so I can see that, 200 have completed FAFSAs and 3 have gone in and created their accounts, but they haven't actually submitted it. And the problem was we didn't know who. We just knew that however many students had not actually submitted fully the FAFSA, and trying to go through 200 something kids is obviously a chore. So this will help us, or help schools, be able to say, okay, John, you did not do this, or you need to go into your FAFSA and make sure that you've completed those final steps. I think that really could be a game changer for schools.
Mm-hmm. So going forward, if you want to move to the next steps slide, because I don't see any other questions, which is great. It's because this isn't, this is supposed to be simple and adaptable and something that's easy to put together and implement. I realize that getting it implemented for every single 12th grader at your school may be challenging. And so one thing is to consider during this FAFSA season, can you partner with 1 or 2 classrooms and try it out and see how it goes for you? And then how can you start having conversations now to have a plan lined up to implement the lesson plan for next fall. So we have October 1 with the date that FAFSA is going to open. So how can you plan around that date to get the FSAID session done before then? So now I think is the perfect time to start having those conversations and really try to do something more big and bold at your school and try to set the goal. We want every single 12th grader to complete the FAFSA lesson plan. So with that said, we're also here to help. Feel free to reach out to me at cashforcollege@alabamapossible.org. We will certainly help you in any way that we can. And another thing is we're looking for feedback too. This is something that is an ongoing process and we're ongoing learning. And so if you find something is really effective, worked well for you, we want to hear about it. We also just want to promote the lesson plan and FAFSA completion as much as we can. So social media is a great tool. And so if you are up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, what have you, these are our hashtags and handles. And I'm fairly young, so I should know this lingo more. But please tag us, and that way we'll see and we can promote what you're doing on our social media and in the weekly emails that I send. And so this, we want to generate a buzz and show that people are doing this. So I think that's it. Let me just double check if we have any other questions. Melissa, do you have anything else you want to share?
No, I think you already addressed that the lesson plan is online on our website or Cash for College website. And it would certainly, I think it'd be a great idea for those that attended to perhaps just send the link out to their economics or senior English teachers as a, hey, FYI, this is something that some other schools are doing, and just to give them an opportunity to think about, well, I like that, and this is what I might do with that for my class, since everything is online now. And that one sheeter, I think that Vanessa mentioned a minute ago, that is super helpful. I don't know if it's on that site, but it's a one-page handout that the students can take home, and it has a little narrative about FAFSA, and it has a series of, I need this particular financial information so that I can complete this tomorrow in class, just depending on, like I said, how you set up that lesson plan.
Great. Well, thank you again to everyone for joining. Please be in touch with any questions, and we're really looking forward to seeing your schools implement the lesson plan and increasing your FAFSA completion rates. So thank you, and have a great Friday and a great weekend. And thank you again to Melissa for being with us.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it.